please, please, please call us at 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. We see you, Anita, from North Carolina, sending you much love. We've got Commissioner Brandon Johnson from the Cook County, the County of Cook here in Chicago. This is one of the largest governments in the world. He's also from the CTU. He's been a teacher, he's a father, he's a husband. And so he does have skin in this game, but we're seeing in Oakland sick outs, in San Francisco sick outs. There are concerns in New York. There are concerns all over the country. And yet in other countries, they have been able to resolve this. And so we have got to talk about how we're going to save our children. And so we've got this tremendous panel with us this morning who can help us to really make sense of this. One of the foremost epidemiologists in the world, she is the Associate Dean of Public Health at the School of Medicine at Michigan State University, comes out of Johns Hopkins. Dr. Deborah Holden, we're so glad that she's with us. Dr. Marnie Reeves from the American Federation of Teachers, the National Federation of Teachers. She is a professor at the City University of New York, and she's also a teacher in the public schools of New York. And so we're going to be joined by some other people. We've got Mike Smith, who's from the mighty, mighty Inglewood High School here in Chicago, Reverend Jackson. He teaches in the STEM program. He's also an organizer with the Chicago Teachers Union. So, Reverend, we just need to go on and get things started today.
Indeed, Senator, this is a great subject. We were involved and we met with the mayor on Wednesday night trying to get a point of view, and then met with the union the next day because we're trying to choose reconciliation, not just choose sides. And really, what you have here is unusual when we negotiate a deal with the firefighters about wage and business. It's not about wages, dollars involved, about safety, about fear. Fear driving the agenda. Sometimes the two most significant things that's not been discussed is the impact of the pandemic itself and the fear of teachers in the environment. Now, because you get 100,000 youth registered, vaccinated, 2,400 unregistered, that means unvaccinated. It means that something is missing here. And at the heart of it was the absence of parents, to me, the critical factor in this thing. Because 2,400 children unregistered, unvaccinated, the parents may not be vaccinated either, and they may not be registered either. So I'm concerned about parents being vaccinated, children vaccinated, as well as the other dimension. Yeah, so sadly, that's the deal that I see. I think we're missing in great mass parents. Because the reason the youth is involved, because the children have it affected, and the parents, the teachers are affected. They each have homes, so they become super spreaders. So right now, the reason why I urge the mayor to look at this real close is that if the teacher has it, the class will be dismissed in like 8-10 days for
having been in contact.
Right. And if the student has it, so it's really important now. The students spread across the school system. It's a sense that you're going to get it unless you're now. The mayor's willing to send the wagons, the medical units, all the schools, the homes, all that. That's a good thing. So in many ways, they're not far as it seems they are.
Well, I think, Reverend, there's also more than vaccinations. People are looking for therapeutics, and they're looking for a physically safe environment. One of the primary modes of transmission of COVID is poor hand hygiene. Do we have access to sinks and soap? And do we have plexiglass that are separating the desks? There is vaccination is a layer. Dr. Deborah Holden, you talk about the Swiss cheese model of protection against COVID. Could you explain that, please?
Sure. This is and good morning, everybody. Think of it like Swiss cheese, right? So if you look at the whole block, the holes do not go all the way through. But if you slice that up and you start to pile up those layers, no one layer is perfect. It's got holes. But as you line them all up, you build this wall of protection. So admittedly, no one layer is perfect, but we need to apply all of them at the same time to get this wall of protection in place for people.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. What are you seeing, Commissioner Johnson? What is your assessment of this situation?
Good morning, Kentita, and good morning to the panel. Really appreciate Reverend Jackson making himself available this week, as he always has done over the course of his time here. What we're really talking about is what you mentioned at the top of the hour. We're really talking about investments here. You know, it's unfortunate that we're in a position where we actually have to negotiate the health and safety of a school district that is primarily Black and brown. What I'm seeing is that in the district that I represent, in the more affluent section of my district, which is this particular section is suburban, there is a health metric, the safety measures that the children in Chicago are calling for. The children in suburban Cook County have that. There were a couple of schools that had to pause because of the positivity rate. The health metric in this particular section, again, a more affluent part of the world, says that at 10% or higher is the positivity rate, that particular school will go into a pause or remote. We don't have that in Chicago. Many of the type of investments that we're talking about as far as having a nurse in every single school, we don't have that. And so when the Biden administration sends $2 billion to the city of Chicago, and the Sun Times reports that there's no account for it, there's no transparency, no one knows where those dollars are going. What we're seeing is what we've been fighting for the last 50 years or so. The same instability that Mayor Daley provocated under Paul Vallis and Arne Duncan with the closure of schools and the loss of Black women, the same type of divestment and instability that we saw under Rahm's administration with the mass closure of schools, teaming up with the wealthy and the powerful and corporations to privatize our children's education and continue to disinvest. We're seeing that same type of instability right now under this current administration, where billions of dollars are not accounted for, and Black death is still very much real right now. So our hope is that, like what we've been doing at the county level, is working with all of the different stakeholders. We just saw here in Chicago, as we've advocated for the state of Illinois to kick in, Governor Pritzker, for the last several weeks, have been trying to give resources to the Chicago Public Schools and to the mayor's administration to no avail. And so now, as of last night, because of the pressure that we continue to apply, suddenly now those investments are now being accepted. And that's masks, antigen testing, all the things we've been asking for, and hopefully a simple health metric so at least parents have an understanding that when their school community reaches a certain level of positivity, there are certain measures that kick in to mitigate the spread and the harm.
You know, one of the things that concerned me, Brian, Brian, was this. One, the negotiations have been taking place by remote as opposed to in person. We get to feel each other. Second, this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, after the negotiations, I thought it should have been around the clock. Children, usually we say that we should be in school Monday to get this resolved.
I believe you're absolutely right. On Friday, the Chicago Public Schools, before we were done negotiating, already made the decision to close schools on Monday, this coming Monday. So we've already missed several days of instruction that could have been carried out remotely. What we're saying is no one is arguing, and Tantita, you know, I talk about this a lot, maybe I don't go into details, but having a 14-year-old at home, I don't know anybody who's ever raised a 14-year-old. Trust me, dude ain't trying to just sit up in his room. He's not. I have a 9 and a 7-year-old. These two children are walking party machines. You hear me? At this point, Dr. Forholden, I will send them to Michigan if you mess with me. But the point is that we want children inside of our schools. The remote presentation is just simply a tool like any other tool to be able to maneuver so that we can ultimately keep children safe. Because here's the thing, and I'm only going off of what I'm reading, so I'm not going to claim like most folks who look up on WebMD that we're all epidemiologists. But when you start to hear reports that suburban Cook County hospitalization, Reverend, is off the charts, and most of those individuals who have been hospitalized are children, the type of ramifications that we're reading about of the long-term impact that this deadly virus could have on children, you know what my biggest worry is? It's not so much trying to figure out how to negotiate around the clock. It's not even so much trying to figure out, you know, a remote scenario, not to mention that there were 100,000 laptops that the Chicago Public Schools purchased before we went on holiday break, right? My biggest worry, to be perfectly frank with you all, is that there will be a generation 10 years from now, and they will look back and wonder, what were we doing? We're literally talking about and negotiating whether or not people, humans, children, should be put in harm's way of a deadly virus that is still in control. This is not about the mayor's ideological position on whether or not remote learning is most effective. We already know it's not the most effective way. What this is about is having tests, contact tracing, access to vaccinations, and to make sure that we actually have enough adults in the buildings. Mike is here, he'll tell you, 50% of some of our school communities don't even have people in them to work. And this is not confined to teachers. We're seeing work shortage all over the country. Not enough folks in the restaurant industry, not enough folks in the delivery industry, not enough folks who are in our classrooms. There's a real shortage of workers, primarily because, and I'll say it, people are sick, they're dying, or they are already dead. That's the hard conversation that all of our administrations need to have, of how do we keep the people who are most likely to be on the front line safe. And in the education arena, that is an arena that is made up of 80% women. The clerks and the school cafeteria workers, the security guards, these are Black folks. These are brown folks. These are working class folks. Wouldn't it be nice to have an administration that puts life and value over someone's ideological frame or interpretation of the CDC guidelines? That I tell you, I would much rather take direction from my 9-year-old than at this point than what the CDC continues to put out.
You know what? Let me hear from Mike Smith. Mike Smith is a STEM teacher at Englewood High School, one of our iconic schools here in Chicago. And it seems to me, I've had you on my show on WCPT throughout the week, and of course, Brandon will be on his show on WCPT at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. I encourage you to listen in today. Um, you were, what I got from you was that what the CTU, the Chicago teachers, did was you formalized what is really happening. Because Reverend Jackson, children are not in class. Teachers are not in class. I mean, and HVAC systems have not been overhauled. Let's hear from Mike Smith. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good morning, Mike.
That's exactly right. When we think about the conditions to keep children in school, they're just not there. I mean, we have to think prior to the pandemic and the things that we were asking for, such as smaller classroom sizes. Just think about that. How can you social distance when you have way too many kids in the classroom? We asked about a custodial staff that is competent and capable. Think about that. How can we have clean buildings if we don't have custodial staff to clean the buildings? We asked for proper ventilation. We have over 300 schools that don't have proper ventilation. I think the board only budgeted for 17 out of those 300 schools. How can we have proper SEL supports, social emotional supports, if we don't have a social worker, a counselor in every school? The district could have done that by simply paying $70 million opposed to the $7 million that they invested this year. How can we have safety in the buildings if we don't have a nurse in every school? And this is just prior to the pandemic. Now we add the pandemic on top of this. A safety agreement, a safety plan to some way mitigate all the problems that we have. Not thinking about what I just named. So that's where we are now. And as a result of that, when we were in the building, September, October, November, December, I will be in the classroom, I'll have 20, 30 kids. Then the next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, maybe a 7. For 3 weeks straight. Not only that children aren't showing, there are some buildings, especially at the elementary level, say they have 23 classrooms. Of those 23 classrooms, more than half are quarantined. We're talking 14 classes out of 23. There's some buildings where everybody is in quarantine. And then we think about the stability of learning. How can a kid learn if they're in school 1 week and then out for a month because they're sick? So when we really think about getting our kids back into school, we have to think about how is school taking place? If there's no teachers, how are the students learning? Who is watching these children in the buildings? So we really need to be cognizant of we just can't put the kids back in the buildings without all of these things in place. Because as it stands now, without these things in place, school really isn't taking place. And that's the concern.
Well, you know, there are plenty of them, and so let's talk about it. Call us at 866-594-HOPE, 866-594-4673, and let us find out what's going on in these schools. And, you know, it's not confined to Chicago. We've got Dr. Marnie Reeves, who's in New York City. She has the same concerns and has been expressing them for the past couple of years. And so we've had a couple of years to work this out, but what do we do going forward? More people for live in just a few minutes. 1-866-594-HOPE. On the roadside.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-594-HOPE. That's 1-866-594-4673.
But it's also right there.
Where is it? I don't see it. Okay. Okay, good. Because my screen is covering that. Hey, Carmen, how are you? You're a professor. You don't have protection either, and you're going back to teaching large numbers of students, 70, 100 plus. Oh, you know, that's Deborah's grandbaby, India. Reverend?
Tantita, I text you too. I don't know if you can hear the feedback.
Okay. We've got bad feedback.
It's
you know.
bad.
Okay.
I could barely hear myself speak, and I heard it with Brandon and Mike too.
Okay. We are in a new studio today. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's a completely new setup. Is that pen big enough for you, Daddy? Daddy, is the pen big enough? Is the pen big enough? I know you didn't need a small pen. Is the pen big enough for you?
Yeah. Is the feedback just
I
when
can
you
write it
guys are talking or just period?
Yeah, you can. You can just do a little bit like that. You just have to adjust.
Dr. Verholden?
You adjust.
So there was an echo.
It's an echo. It's not
That's
really
your
feedback,
fine
so you can hear her
That's why you
twice.
have to work on your fine motor skills.
Wait, Marnie's is
You
different
have to
though
work on
than
your fine
the
motor
others.
skills.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a new.
So you can hear
can't have
it
everybody doing things for you.
repeated.
It's gonna hurt you.
But Marnie, yours sounds different to me than Mike's and Brandon's did. Oh, it does. Okay. Because I heard you speaking twice, so it was like an echo. Like I'm hearing myself as I'm speaking now with the echo.
Okay, I'll work on
that. Now I only hear it on you. I don't hear it on us. Okay.
We're dealing with a new phone system, so I will send the feedback to them and Try to get
A
on.
new studio, a new everything.
Yeah, and it's low.
Yeah, it's completely foreign to all of us. Stand by. We don't even use the phone. Everything goes through the computer now. Period. Okay, so let's see. Reverend, we're going to go to
All right,
Dr.
stand by.
Reeves from New York, okay? Hello? Daddy. Daddy, can you hear me? Hey, everybody, welcome to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. Sitting here with Jeremy Geiger, our wingman, our technical producer here. So glad to see him in the new year. And we've got a tremendous panel to talk about how we can get our children back into school safely. But we need to know what's going on with them, what they're dealing with, what the teachers are seeing, Reverend Jackson, what the students, what the people who serve the food, the people who clean the buildings, the clerks, the aides, all of those persons. We need to know what is happening. And it seems to me that the Chicago Teachers Union formalized what has been going on informally. Our kids are not in school. Many teachers are not in school. Many people are contracting COVID. Many are not vaccinated, but many don't even know how to begin to protect themselves, whether they're vaccinated or not. One of the things that you pointed out, Dr. Deborah Verholden, epidemiologist, associate dean of public health at the School of Medicine, at Michigan State University, before we go to Dr. Reeves, is that we started flattening the curve before we got a vaccine. How did that happen? I mean, if we conflate that with the vaccine and other therapeutics, could we tamp this down? Even though the president did concede this week that, well, he didn't concede, but many of your colleagues said this is something that's endemic. We're going to have to learn how to live with COVID. What are we not doing, Dr. Verholden?
The basic thing that we learned that we already knew long before the pandemic hit, right? So we're talking specifically about kids and kids being in school. And we already know that schools are not created equally. We already know there's so many schools that don't have a way to circulate air. My kids went to a school in Baltimore City where none of the windows at the school opened, and so these problems predated COVID and we didn't address them. And now we are dealing with, I'm sorry, it's very hard to hear myself.
Oh boy, okay. Well, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's just I can hear myself twice.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that my mom always taught me, I can talk to myself as long as nobody
Okay. How about now?
So I'll just static. Let's see. I think that's a little better.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, so my point is, we probably predate COVID, and now here we are now in COVID, and all these things that we've learned, we're still trying to nickel and dime our way through to these quick and dirty solutions that won't solve problems. We just missed the opportunity to just get schools better. If we had better air handling systems and air exchange systems, if we had thinned out the classroom and reduced the classroom size, there are a lot of things that if we had made those long-term investments, even at the beginning of the pandemic, we wouldn't be where we are right now. But we just won't do that. We keep going for these quick and dirty solutions. We've got politicians and even some leaders, like at the CDC and other places saying follow the science, but they themselves won't follow the science. They're trying to shift the science to fit the politics. And it's unfortunate because who's paying the price are our teachers and the people our teachers, our students, and our community. Kids not being in the classroom, kids not being able to learn is a problem, and we all know that. But we also have problems about just sending all of these people back into environments that aren't conducive for learning and that aren't helpful.
Dr. Verholden, let me observe this. That when the mayor says that we go out of school, we're losing 3 years on the road part. Secondly, that we have to look at the impact of that. 100,000 are vaccinated, 240,000 are unvaccinated. Now, I think that these school conditions, CTU must do a better job, it seems to me, what Mike Smith just said. It's eager to me that he lays out problem And we don't see the problem. We were doing Push Excel some years ago. We went to Germany, and at time to pick up report cards, it was a day off for parents, the morning off, 8 to 12. And thousands of parents were there. And so we said, why are these parents here? The guy said, it's their children. It's their children that said something about. We are getting Push Excel every report card, period, parents, period report card. Use a child's future. The attack for the parents is of such, they don't know what's happening at the school. That's why the parent thing is so significant. The middle parents themselves are not vaccinated, not reaching the vote. I wish we did sit on that, Bradley. I mean, those parents are unregistered, unvaccinated, therefore not pulling their weight to put pressure on the school system to make it happen.
Well, hold on, Reverend. We've got Dr. Marnie Reeves, who's active in Rainbow Push out of New York City. She's with the AFT, she's with the NFT, she teaches at CUNY, she's a professor at the City University of New York, and she's a teacher in the New York City public schools. Does this sound familiar to you, Dr. Reeves?
Good morning, everyone. I was listening to everyone that said about when we first went on remote learning. And I think I'm feeling, and I've heard from a lot of people about remote learning, and some are not understanding realistically that there are two parts to remote learning. There's asynchronous learning and synchronous learning. So I've heard Mayor Lightfoot talk about holding kids hostage. So I just wanted to address a few things. If a child is sitting in a classroom remotely from home with their teacher at home as well, delivering a lesson synchronously, that child is not missing out on learning. What they're missing out on probably is that social contact with their peers. Okay? So they're not missing out on learning. Asynchronous is more of an independent learning where there's work without the presence of a teacher. However, if it's set up correctly, they can have access to that teacher should they need it. So I don't want anyone to really bash, and I'm not saying that anyone here especially is doing that, but I just want to ensure that there's that understanding. If this is planned properly, then the child does not miss out on learning. They miss out on the social emotional contact with their peers and other adults in the building. But let me just go a step back. When this pandemic first started 2 years ago, the hope was that in returning to school, there would be certain things that would be in place to ensure safety of everyone, not just students, not just teachers, but our food service workers, our custodians. Every single person who was to step in a school building was supposed to be safe. New York City did not plan to have any of those things in place. So then the United Federation of Teachers decided we're going to go into our schools to inspect to see what it is that we need in order to ensure that our teachers and our children return to school and would have that protection. And so when we went into a lot of our schools, we realized, as Mike was talking about with ventilation, there was not adequate or proper ventilation in place. So what did we do? We talked about the classrooms that should not be opened, okay? We turned around and said, well, if we're gonna open this classroom, we need to ensure that there are 2 air purifiers in the room, depending on the size. We needed to ensure that everyone would have masks. Who was gonna provide that to us? Are we gonna rely on parents to give it to their children? No. The city of New York was getting funding from the federal government to ensure that there was safe and healthy returns to school. So they had to make sure that those things were in place. What else did we need? We needed gloves. We needed to ensure that there were face shields for those people who could not wear a mask an entire day. So we wanted to make sure that the proper PPE equipment was in place. We had to make sure that the cleaning protocols were in place. We had to make sure that other safety protocols and safety measures were in place. But this is the one thing that no one could have expected. The fact that whether we were vaccinated or unvaccinated, the virus was coming into our school buildings and spreading. And it is at this point surging. New York City is over 21% in the positivity rate. Prior to
the Christmas break, we had such a surge in our numbers that, for any scientist to say, well, you got to be vaccinated, right? For many of us, it was, how are you saying that it's only the unvaccinated that's bringing it in when a lot of the vaccinated were bringing that virus into our school buildings? So what we asked for was to pivot back to remote temporarily until we could ensure one other layer that the city went back on, adequate testing. Prior to the Christmas break, they said it was 10% only of the people in the building. So imagine a school that has 3,000 kids, 400 staff. You're only testing 10% of the unvaccinated, not vaccinated. You're only testing some of the educators because the testing companies would come in and say, we're only supposed to be here until 11:30. They walked into our buildings at 9 o'clock and said by 11:30 they had to be out. How many people could they truly have tested in that time? So we realized even before we returned to school that the city of New York was not going to follow through on its promises, okay? We realized that. A lot of us decided we were going to take our extra measures and do our testing outside of the school. But we also have issues with a community that is not helping us to ensure safety. We have parents whose children tested positive and never notified the school. So of course, we have children in the classrooms who, whether they're vaccinated or not, they're getting that virus, okay? We have staff members who are all vaccinated, okay? So that's one piece that we ensured from the union side that we had. Every single member who went into a school had to be vaccinated by a certain date. We covered our end, but I'm seeing where my membership, my colleagues, are testing at a ridiculously high rate, positive on these tests. When they're going to work, they're doing what they want to do.
Well, you know, Reverend,
you're back in school in New York City. What are you doing different than Chicago, for example?
We have a leader who has decided to ask every single one of his members, what is it that you need in the school, right? So we sat down, even through the Christmas break, we sat down to negotiate what are the safety measures that have to be included in our schools that were not. So we came out of the Christmas break with not just 10% being tested, now we're doing 20%. So we ensured before we returned to school that certain safety measures were in place. We were not going to return without those safety measures being in place.
but hold on, Dr. Reeves. Dr. Reeves, I hear Mike Smith, I hear you giving her, you're affirming what she's saying.
Well, yeah, because what she's throughout Texas is exactly what's going on in Chicago. Our schools are exactly the same when it comes to that. Unlike New York, however, we're not even testing 10%, and they're now at 20%. What we've been asking is to at least increase testing to that point, because we experience the same things where these testing companies come in, they're there for a certain amount of time. Not everyone's being tested because of how long they're there. Teachers who are vaccinated are testing positive. It's all the same issues. And what I'm hearing is different that's allowing people in New York to stay in school is that they came together to figure out a plan to address it. I mean, we released a plan that is similar to that so that we can get back into schools. Yet for some reason, even though the issues they have in New York is the same as Chicago, our leadership here is saying that's not an issue.
So can I add something to what you're saying?
Yes, quickly.
Something to what you're saying, and I will repeat this continuously. I remember coming to the International Conference of Members for Coalition several years ago, and we were having breakfast. And Reverend Johnson brought up there was an issue in Bangladesh where one of the sweatshops there actually it was the building crumbled and set
several thousand people died, okay?
Yeah, I told
And Reverend Jackson did not hesitate. What he said to us was, I need everybody to put comfortable shoes on because we're going to go down to Gap and we're going to picket. We're going to be marching out there because we need to have a solution to this. It wasn't something that was on the agenda for the conference. It was something he felt in that moment needed to be done. Every person got up, went to get their comfortable shoes, went to put their sneakers on. The buses were ready for us. We went and we picketed, right? We were outside of the Gap marching until somebody came out and spoke with Reverend and the rest of us there. If you're saying that there's a plan of action there, are the teachers out there picketing and saying we need to have our voices heard? Because this is what I truly believe about every teacher. We want to do our job. We love our job. That's why we chose to become educators. However, I am seeing on the news where people are saying that the Chicago public school teachers are holding the students hostage, and I know that's absolutely not true. However, why is it that their voices are being heard and they're being seen, but our teachers are not? The teachers need to be out there letting the world know we are not asking for remote learning because we don't want to teach. We want our students to be safe primarily, and we also want to be safe.
Dr. Reeves.
Reverend, we have 1 minute.
Dr. Reeves, my concern here is that you let total involvement. I think Jansen should be at the table, the cook should be at the table, parents, all these elements are not involved. It's like the teachers and the administrators out on the island, and they're meeting remote, by the way, having negotiations not remote, that's a human feeling. And then parents being detached, ministers not at the table, so I almost had to break it at the table because I haven't negotiated deals before. But the two people involved for the state should be so high for so many.
Well, we're going to be talking about that. We want to hear from you. 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. Let's talk about how we can get back into these schools safely. And I think you do make a great point, Dr. Reeves. You really have to get in the streets. We're hearing the sweets discussion, but we need to have street action so that people can really know what the teachers are fighting for. Come on, that's it. Who do you think that came from? How about that piece? More of Keep Hope Alive throughout the week. Please join us at rainbowpush.org, rainbowpush.org. We are slowly and safely reopening our Saturday morning forum. Please be patient with us because, we want to be safe in the midst of the surge. But you can call us throughout the week at 773-FREEDOM, 773-FREEDOM, and you can go to rainbowpush.org and lend us your support. More of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson in just a few minutes. It's the same hand. What I'm trying to ask you to do is to use one hand to hold this.
Mom was diagnosed
And get
with
the
Alzheimer's.
position. You got to find a way to hold the pen so that you can use it. Because you can still write. You just have to write differently. Okay, so use both of your hands. Can you see?
Peter, can I ask Mike a question?
No, of course you may.
Mike, I wanted to find out, do your schools have school leadership teams that include representation from every single title that's in the building?
Yeah,
So do you have a food service worker?
Yeah, we call those safety
Paraprofessional?
committees. Yeah, we call those safety committees, where we have the different people from the different unions inside the building to pretty much inspect the school to ensure that it's safe. The issue that we're having with that is that these things are reported and they're not addressed.
So we have our school safety committee, but we have a body that includes staff, students, and parents that's in place to literally guide the process of what happens in the school.
Exactly. We have those same
Water.
things.
Water?
Yeah, so
The issue we're having
DeVito?
is
There's none up there.
that they
He's not
find
up
these
here?
problems,
Oh,
and we
sweetie,
get
could
these
you get me some
reports,
water, please?
and we have district
There's none up
meetings
there.
every week.
It's up
They say
downstairs.
we need to look at these schools and address them.
They took out all
And
the
in
vending
these
machines.
conversations, they say those aren't
So
problems.
we'd have to go to McDonald's or something? Is there anything open here?
You know, we have people
We
who
have to
are
have
not
more,
willing to work
not even McDonald's.
with the people in the building.
The tap water
It goes way beyond. There's a serious issue
I should have brought water
with the
me. I
leadership and the
didn't know.
direction that they have,
They don't have
and
anything here.
how they think or what they believe is really happening in the school buildings.
So can I
There's a
ask what they
disconnect.
did with the ESSER funding? What happened with the ESSER funding that was given to Chicago?
That's what we,
unless it goes,
yeah, that's what we would like
unless
to
it goes
know
to
as
the hotel.
well.
Daddy,
I mean, these are
I
things
need
that we
you to
keep
sit up
bringing up.
straight.
It's like, where's this extra money?
Okay.
Where is all of it? The mayor there, she spent $100 million, but we got close to $2 billion to address a lot of.
Well, you haven't gotten the entire $2 billion, but you've gotten so far $1 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how much we got exactly, but I know we've got more than $100 million.
No, so you got $206 million from the CARES Act, $796 million from the coronavirus relief
So that's $1 billion.
Appropriations Act. So that's $1 billion. You have another $1.78 billion that's supposed to be coming your way. So
And
the
those
question
funds are
is,
being accounted for.
yeah. So the question is, what did they use that funding to do?
Exactly.
Whew. Okay, Commissioner,
Hey, still here.
where'd that money go?
You know, we just, the Sun-Times just released a story on that very question. We've been going to the Board of Education for the last 6 months, asking these questions repeatedly. There's no answer. There's literally no answer. And what we have found out to our sister in New York is that the money that has been spent so far has only been spent on the things that they spend money on anyway. So there has not been any additional investment. You know, and I don't want to sound like we're characterizing, you know, Chicago in some sort of unique fashion, or don't even want to come across like a type of but there really is a real
30 seconds. We're coming out.
Okay,
No,
I'm sorry.
it's not just,
Hold on, I'm
yeah.
sorry. Brandon, what time do you need to leave to head to WCPT?
So I got it about 8 o'clock because I got to get hair and makeup, you know, safety.
I know that.
I won't look like work. But he was showing out yesterday too.
Okay, well, so I need to let you go. So you want to do closing remarks here?
I can do that.
Okay, you'll have 2 minutes.
Fair enough.
At 58 to
We need
26.
you around Reverend Jackson all the time. He was just cutting up his
Stand by. And we're coming
Stand
up
by.
live now.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Keep Up Live Calls for the second hour. What do you think about the safety of our schools? Are the schools safe enough to be reopened? You're hearing from teachers from all over the country.
The testing company is well set.
What?
They're testing 500,000 youth a week in Los Angeles. We've done given 100,000 so far. We base about 500,000 in a week. 240,000 can be double in a week.
Right, and you know our friends in Europe just routinely go get tested and they don't have to pay for it. I mean, this is ridiculous, because whether you have been vaccinated or not, Dr. Verholden has told us that you need to know what your COVID status is. That's been part of the problem with the CDC's instructions. You can go in, even if you're asymptomatic. No, if you're asymptomatic, you got it. I don't want to be around that. You know what, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, you're about to go to WCPT at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. I've got now literally 90 seconds for you. Your thoughts, what should we be looking out for this week?
This is hard for everyone. I should just say this is hard for everyone, whether collaborate and work together, much like what the Biden administration is doing, much like what the governor of Illinois is doing, much like what Cook County government involved in the U.S. And all of us have skin in the game here. And if we're really serious about having improved quality of life for people in this very, very rich and harsh economy, we have to not just ensure that school systems are safe, we have to make sure that they are fully effective. And that's important. It's important because for some of the folks who have been lost, um, we have a right to recover and recover to be in a much better state than we were prior to the pandemic. If only we were to get out of our way and actually allow our imagination to think beyond what has been presented. I believe that's what people are fortunately doing. That's what we're hoping to do. And that's what we're certainly trying to do in organizing. Thank you, sir.
Poor people must have rich,
To all the voices around the country.
poor people must have rich habits. Poor people that have poor habits. Lack of attention to our children in school, not business schools. So we accept the fact that I put a lot of burden on parents because that's not who raising most of it. They're paying the bill. You're paying the bill and don't show up to demand accountability, then you're throwing your money away.
Well, there you have it. So let's talk about this in the second hour of People Alive. 866-594 Hope. Back in just a minute.
Thank you for listening to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. For more information on upcoming shows and guests, please visit our website at www.keephopealiveradio.com.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandon.
All right, thank you, y'all. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brandon.
Take care, Brandon. You're welcome.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Holden, how things in Richmond today?
Reverend, speak
Mr. Holden?
clearly, slowly.
Yeah,
How
but
things in Richmond?
everything's great. Everything's great today.
Are the Detroit schools open?
In Flint, our schools are not open right now, and I want to hear from Dr. Reeves about how they're doing this remote learning, and it's just great because it's not great for us.
Yeah.
We only get, when we're on remote, 65% of our kids showing up. It's not going well here. Our case positivity rate in Flint is 35%.
Stand by.
So our kids aren't even in school.
I want you to share that information when we get back on the air. Stand by. Reverend, put it up here.
Yeah.
Put it up here. Okay. All right. We're going to come right on and off, okay? Daddy, we're going to come on and off. Put your headphones on. Daddy, you adjust it. Push it, push it, push it back. Try to push it back. Push it back. Daddy, you've got to put them on properly or we're going to get feedback. Put it on your ear. On your ear.
Ooh. Yeah. My.
Keep it alive. Yes. Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry, we're up on here. What's your name? Yes, I'm here.
Mississippi Mass Choir, Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend's about to have a fit in here today.
Who's on the piano?
I don't know, but there's something that comes out of Mississippi. My goodness. Oh boy, Nina Simone said it, and we say God bless the Mississippi Mass Choir. Everybody call us at 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. Are our schools safe enough to reopen? What do the schools need? What needs to happen? We've got 300 of these schools in Chicago. Only 17 of them had their air ventilation systems redone, Reverend. I mean, come on.
I must say to speak about it that the pastor of City College this week,
Oh, yes.
a big deal to us. But he came from situations, well, worse than we have in Flint, Michigan, Chicago, New York City. But somehow the X factor of will was certainly loose on him. So we must somehow, at the end of the day, parents, choose strategy. Parents must be involved in mass. We're not going to give that to the room on that. It's been talked in the past. In mass, not only there like one, that tremendous civil rights.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think the thing I see that you're the judge of the company.
At the Negro Ensemble Company. And in fact, he had such a thick Bahamian accent. He was told that he wouldn't make it in Hollywood, and he couldn't read. So he stepped back, worked on his accent, and learned to read. But you think of a Sammy Davis Jr., you think of these people who you don't know where they came from, Reverend, but you sure do know where they ended up. And they worked and they worked and they worked. And we cannot forget Lonnie Lanier. I remember her being at the Rainbow Push Conference talking about the canaries in the mine and how black people were the canaries in the mine. And if you sent us down and you brought black people back up out of the mines and we were alive, all was well. But if we didn't make it out, you knew all was not well. And she said all was not well in America, and that was more than 25 years ago. And we just thank God for her pioneering work, and we are poor because she was not an assistant attorney general in our Department of Justice, but we are richer because of all of her contributions to the world of jurisprudence. We'll be back with more People Alive in just a few minutes. We want to hear from you, 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. Let us talk about how we can create a safe environment, Reverend, in schools. And when you come back, Reverend, we want to hear what you've been, about your conversations with Mayor Lightfoot and the Chicago Teachers Union, because you said you're not choosing sides, you're trying to affect reconciliation, which is what your ministry's been about for more than 60 years. More People Alive in just a few minutes.
Should I feel why should the shadows come? And why should my heart be lonely? Lord, my heavenly home, when Jesus is my portion. The constant, the rare His love is on the He watches.
Your opinion counts. 1-866.
Everyone, we're so sorry about the sound today. We've had a lot of challenges. We're in a new studio, as you can see.
Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 58 years old.
That takes a toll on everyone. I mean, it's a depressing disease to watch unfold before your eyes.
You start to see the person's soul is like gone.
This disease just ravages a family.
It changes your life.
The magnitude of it is indescribable.
Now is the moment to stop Alzheimer's disease. Call Bright Focus at 855-345-6237. Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 58 years old.
For me, it was hard. It takes a toll on everyone. I mean, it's a depressing disease
But
to watch
I tell you what,
unfold
you understand the
before your
difference
eyes.
You just
between,
don't see because the other
you
person's
know,
soul is
accompaniment.
This disease just ravages a family.
It changes your life.
The magnitude of it is indescribable.
Now is the moment to stop Alzheimer's disease. Call Bright Focus at 855-345-6237.
He could do that as a
Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 58
Fred
years old.
Nelson.
For me, it was
Freddie Young. Now, Dad, you need to keep those over your ears so we don't get feedback in the mics. Okay? No, you can speak to everybody now. Reverend. Hope they'll put them on, yes. Speak to your guests.
Dr. Reed?
I'm here, Reverend. I'm here.
Cook with hot grease this morning.
Well, she's one of your people and you're yours.
Dr. Hold up.
My pleasure.
You can't cook with cold grease, you know.
But
There's no fire. You have to be on fire to give up the grease.
Reverend, speak slowly and
Yeah.
clearly.
you know what? I've had the pleasure of being a part of Rainbow Push, and you've always called us to action. And that's what I take with me into working with my colleagues in the union. And I certainly appreciate that.
I want to talk with you this week. Please call me this week.
Okay, Cynthia will make sure.
She gave me the my salesman over. She was in Atlanta Monday, Tuesday this week. President Biden and Harris is coming to Atlanta Tuesday. Talk about the voting rights situation.
We'll be extra careful because they are concerned about you coming and other people coming because they have got a real surge in Omicron.
Yeah, everywhere.
So make sure that you stay masked when you are with them.
Yeah.
Okay? Make sure, because I got several messages from friends in Atlanta and they're concerned that you're coming. So there's that. But, we have to learn how to live with this. Deborah Furholden, Dr. Furholden, you said it was endemic. So here we are. Can you get 4?
Troy?
Huh? It's a huge deal. That's why I have my alcohol right over here. And my spray bottle. And I have betadine in my nose. Daddy? You do it, no, you can do it. But you're putting it on wrong. Take it off. Turn this so that you gotta work on this. Now put it on. Put one on and then the other.
How you say his last name?
And adjust. LaRaviere.
LaRaviere.
Now push the other one on. Push that. Push it.
It's LaRaviere. Sorry, I'm butchering your name. Hold on for a second.
I forgot what it was. Push that back on your ear.
Said my name right. Oh.
Yeah, push that on your ear. Now, can you put it on your ear? Put it on.
All right. Stand by.
You're listening to Keep Hope
Coming
Alive.
up in 10 seconds.
Jesse Jackson. Call 1-866-594-HOPE. That's 1-866-594-4673.
No. Hey everybody, welcome to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. It's Sunday, January 9th. Happy New Year. Dedicating the show to Sidney Poitier, this cultural giant and the legal giant, Lonnie Grenier. We thank God for their lives today, for all that they did to make our lives richer, better, and to increase our rights and to give us our dignity. Reverend Jackson, we've got a tremendous panel with us today. I'd like to, of course, reintroduce Dr. Deborah Furholden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine, comes out of Johns Hopkins. We've got Dr. Marnie Reeves from the AFT, the NFT, and the New York City schools where she teaches, but she's also a professor at the City University of New York. Mike Smith from the mighty Inglewood High School. I'm not mad at him. I keep telling him, Reverend, 'cause I went to Whitney Young, but we ain't mad at Inglewood. We love Inglewood. But he's a STEM teacher, a STEM teacher. Always love our, always love our teachers and love to see these black men who teach. And we've got Troy LaRaviere. We're so excited that he's with us because, of course, he has been one of our leading principals, and now he's leading all the principals in Chicago as we are looking to really create an education system that works for everybody. He is the president of the Chicago Principals Administrators Association. So, Reverend,
But people like Troy should be at the table. Dr. Reeve said at the table should be affect the people. The parents should be involved, the teachers should be involved, the principals should be involved, the janitors, all of them should be at the table. You get more balance because that thing boils down to teachers versus mayor. That's too narrow concept for what we're talking about here.
well, and it shouldn't be versus now, should it?
It is versus. That's why I'm trying to give a representative. Some years ago, when I was a fire strike in Chicago, 27 people were killed in 27 days. And I just really got involved and talked with the mayor. The mayor said, you can't talk to the union. She several curse words about them. I agreed with them. They said stuff about her. I said, when you get the person, what we supposed to do? And she said these things. They said these things. And I found that they were at some point become angry, talking past each other. So at the end of the 48 hours, the trouble between us, we resolved the fire strike. And now the lots of women who love to not shoot the fire department. There's something you said about talking with each other, not talking with each other, talking about each other.
Amen to that. Troy LaRaviere, what are your thoughts about this? Are you all part of these negotiations, these discussions?
Well, I believe Reverend Jackson is a kid. We got a lot of there. The engineers and custodians are not interested. You talk about keeping the building clean and making sure that ventilation is at the point where it is working well enough to support a safe classroom. Like, these are all people who should be at the table, but more importantly, they should be at the table because they bring facts, right? Facts that represent the reality of what schools are like that no one else can bring to the table. You know, we did a survey of our principals, and our principals have a pretty good sense of what's going on in terms of cleanliness and ventilation, because they're in constant communication with the custodians and the engineers and the custodial supervisory company. And we have a huge amount of filth in the Chicago public schools. We surveyed our principals and asked them a question. And the question was, have you performed custodial work this year? I'm talking about principals. And 24% said they did a moderate amount. 29%, anywhere from a moderate amount to a lot. 29% says, 24% said they did a moderate amount. 34% said they did a lot, right? That's well over 50% of principals who have performed custodial work, because the custodial management company that CPS has hired is doing one of the worst jobs. You know, everyone is, by this time, everyone's heard of Aramark and what a poor custodial company they are. But if 50% of principals are doing custodial work because the work that's being done is so shoddy, so inadequate. One principal told me when our kids walk through the school, she was about on the verge of tears. She said, when my kids walk through the school, they have to feel like nobody loves them because of the conditions that CPS has allowed the schools to deteriorate to. And then, but CPS gets on TV, and the mayor gets on TV, and the CEO gets on TV and says schools have been cleaned from top to bottom. And yet the people who are in the schools, running the schools, saying the exact opposite, right? CPS is not bringing the facts to the table that would give the public an adequate sense of what the schools actually are saying. You know, the truth is both sides say a little bit of the truth. You know, some schools are safe, some schools are clean.
according to what principals are telling me. And a lot of schools are not. And so let's be honest about that. You know, CPS often says schools can be safe place with proper mitigation strategies in place. Well, CPS is right. That's what the science has said. They can be safe when proper mitigation is in place. But the thing they're being dishonest about is that in far too many schools, not all, but in far too many schools, proper mitigation is not there. Let's be honest about that. And what I think the public really has to understand is that if you are a teacher, if you are in the school, you see the filth, you see the lack of cleanliness, right? You see that the ventilation isn't working right, and you look at the television and you see the mayor or the CEO saying that schools are clean. You know they're lying because you're in the school. And then in the next breath, the mayor or CEO says, not only are they clean, but they're also safe. And so you just saw them repeat one lie with the first statement that came out of their mouth. What makes you think that the second statement? So how is the teacher supposed to feel about that second statement? That schools are safe. And that's the thing that the public has to understand about the frustration that the district is lying to the public and the teachers about are seeing this. And I think it's feeding a lot of the frustration that's out there. Like, I think if the district was just honest, that, you know, we have some places where things are in place, we have some schools where they're not, and we need to work on that. I think they get a lot much more respect and they go a lot further in these negotiations. But for a teacher to see that, you have to feel like you're being gaslighted. And no one likes to feel that.
I'm concerned, Mike, you're responsible for this. My point has been total involvement. The ministers have rolled in this. Massive parents have rolled 240,000 students. That's about 200,000 parents. Those parents, by and large, have not been able to see the conditions schools to attend. Because it doesn't involve the unvaccinated, unregistered, and detached. They have a moral obligation to be involved. They can become the power player in this thing. With Troy said, you know, your child's going to school, run down, you're going to reach out about it. The silence of parents reflects a certain distance that we cannot survive.
Mike Smith, I mean, because Renee Criswell was saying not all schools have the same conditions. Some are filthy while others are spotless, with many falling in between. And this is in a pandemic, everybody. They should all be spotless. She continues, there should have been a big fight to prevent the contract from being given back to Aramark. Because there have been lots of complaints. And Robin, you know that we have several of the top high schools in the state, in Chicago, and they're all the highly selective schools, right? They are the Paytons, the Whitney Youngs, the Joneses, and on and on and on and on, Northside Prep. They're spotless, at least as far as I can tell. But it's these other schools. I mean, how do you send someone into a building that is unclean, that does not have an air ventilation system that's working properly in a pandemic? Dr. Verholden, how does that work?
He will strike the first blow. I'm going to come right back to it.
Okay.
And I said, you guys at school, Jack and I met your teachers. Teachers feel they can talk with us about you, about your brothers in school. My point is, I can't get rid of the point that first things first. Parents must become militant about fighting for their children. When parents do it, they're volunteers. You say nurses. If you said we need 150 nurses volunteer, you get a lot of who do it. You get first is trust to tell the truth, and then you ask what you need.
Well, Dr. Verholden, I mean, what are you seeing in Flint? Is Dr.
About getting kids back to school. Because the problem is all the time that they spent out of school, nothing was done to make the school better for them in order so that they could return the kids and the staff and the teachers and all of that safely. So part of me is like, I don't know. I'm like, this feels like a whole lot of talk and not a lot of walk. It's not rocket science. This isn't one of those things where we need some big master plan or more research. We know exactly what's needed. We just haven't been making those investments. And the same thing that's happening in Chicago, I think, has been happening with us in Michigan, both in Flint and in Detroit schools and a lot of the other major school districts, which is that you've got some elected leaders saying one thing in the media, and it does not align with the actual experience of the real stakeholders in the school, the students, the parents, the teachers, the principals, the staff. They say what they're saying does not align with what is actually happening in the schools.
Mike Smith?
Get down to what it is. I mean, you have to go back to the fight for access education in the 50s and prior to that. And that's what we're talking about right now. In certain schools, in certain areas, they just lack the resources. And that's just what it is. When we think about these schools that are dirty, are filthy, there are the schools that are in South Side, West Side, poor communities. The people there haven't been getting the type of support that they need. So when they point out that schools are clean, there are some clean schools, like in Lakeview and Lincoln Park. However, there are a lot of schools that are not clean, that don't have proper ventilation, that don't have windows that open, that don't have heat. I mean, we've gotten reports and videos of cockroaches walking across the room, dead mice and rats in buildings. These are the conditions that our schools are in. These are issues that we've been raising that never been addressed. I think Brandon pointed out before he left that the mayor insists that investments have been done in the schools. But those were investments that have already been budgeted. She points out that she's keeping the schools open to provide lunches. I mean, that's what you should be doing. That's the least you could be doing. That's what you did when we were on remote last year. But everything else that needs to be done, you can't ignore that. You can't give us crumbs and pretend it's cake, like Alderman Taylor would say.
Do you know, Dr. Reeves, what are you hearing?
Well, the first thing that they said, which I said before, is that we don't have all the stakeholders at the table. I believe realistically, as a parent who's had children in public schools, that you don't need to be invited to the table to speak up. If your child is impacted, you should be right there in that room. If they close the door, you should be beating down that door, because it impacts you, it impacts your child, it impacts your community. As someone who's been an educator for over 22 years, I can say that there's no door that's been closed that I've not beat down on to ensure that my voice is heard, in order that my colleagues' voices are heard, in order that every other parent like myself who had children in the public school was heard. I think the issue here is there is no unified body working to ensure that they're working against the corporatocracy. We have politics at play here. There's a divide and conquer here. And if the key stakeholders don't realize what's going on, then we will have a continuation of what now exists. There's no reason why the principals should be standing aside on one side and the teachers on the other. There's no reason why the custodial staff is coming in maybe once or twice a week and not in the school daily from the time the school opens until the school closes. Because this is what I'm hearing. If a child is sick, they throw up all over the floor, the principals or the teachers got to clean it up. Where's your custodial staff? What I'm hearing is that food services is in the building and they have an issue. They have to wait to have somebody to come in to assist them. That's not how you run an effective school system. These are things that I'm hearing. There is no meeting of the minds here, okay? And if you have a community of parents who work so hard that they can't come to meetings after school, then you meet them where they are. You meet them on the weekends. You meet them on a Saturday or Sunday. If they say to you, I'm working on a Saturday, then okay, can we meet on a Sunday, because all voices need to be heard. Because in corporate America, if it's a small number that's complaining and the majority is saying nothing, they will not listen to you.
Well, Troy, they have been corporatized, like the media, and you're only hearing one side, and it's not the people's side. Troy, I've got 2 minutes.
I'd like to make a point about racial issues because it's actually now that yes, racial inequity comes to what this club when they hire what kids do actually they don't get involved with, but it's not shop. You found out something, and I can put the blame that led by not necessarily by this is always custodial functions actually equal opportunity for creative that question about the board. It was negative upon
What company is that? What company is that, Troy?
the error mark. Most error marks have people across the board. Now we didn't break it down. Yes, not we didn't break it down. Like, the only category where actually our president the difference is about 40% majority black, 50% of the people that are majority black. That's the only category that I found in racial inequity rate. Every other category, whether it's staff, legal, it's across the board. You can't point out like one particular racial group that's suffering or two or certain particular racial group that's suffering for Paramount is something that we have equal opportunity for their skills. But more importantly, the district is not recognizing that honesty about their skills communication to the public in terms of giving people focus why people are not buying their art.
Troy, we had a community conference meeting on this 000 about race, racial separation, racial alienation, all that. Parents, the mass market, Dr. King came to Chicago based on that. But the race thing is how can I put this thing?
Well, we'll get to it on the other side of the break, back in just a minute.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-594-HOPE. It's
Can you find Save the Children by Marvin Gaye?
1-866-594-4673.
Daddy, you've got to over-enunciate. You've got to over-enunciate and speak up. You must speak up and over-enunciate. This is not a conversation. Give us your radio voice. Give us your radio voice. You've got to give us more energy, okay? You got to try. You got to hold on. You got to try. Can you use the other? And move some of the time. Move some of the time. Push it back. Push it back all over your ear.
Yeah, all right.
Okay? Because I can't get feedback.
Well, yeah, play piano some more. Right.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. Yeah, but you need to keep that over your ear so we don't get feedback. Okay? Daddy, which time are you going to land? You can hear me. What time are you going to land? What time are you going to land? Be careful. There's a lot bouncing around. And that is not what's being recommended right now. It's not recommended. Yeah.
Their opinion. Why weren't they a part of the process?
administrators don't have collective bargaining. We actually filed a bill to get collective bargaining rights last session. It passed the House, passed the Senate Executive Committee, and then our governor, who's supposedly so pro-labor, and he is pro-labor, majority white teaching force that we have, called our sponsor, basically phoned in a veto threat for the
Stand by,
majority black and
everybody.
Latino force that we have.
Do I have any? Hey everybody, welcome back to Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. We've got Troy LaRaviere. Well, okay, we'll keep on playing the song. I'm not mad at you. Save the children. Go bring it up. Keep bringing it up, Jeremy. Hold it. Oh my goodness. The prophetic Marvin Gaye, everybody. We've got a tremendous panel with us talking to us about how we can save the children and the custodial staff and the food staff and the clerks and the teachers' aides and the teachers and the children.
I want to put the advocate the table said. Put it this way, I was saying all about race. You know, black kills white is jail time. White kills black is riot, rebellion time. Black kills black is military. We're not prepared to react as we should at the base. We've got desegregation laws passed, which we all fought for that. But we found out that it's not enough to do the positive education. So my concern is here that the base is not involved. So I've heard no one have a president say principal should be at the table. Judge, well, I hear Troy saying I don't hear it at the table.
What do you hear Troy saying?
That all those people should be at the table. Because they have janitors, engineers should be at the table, cooks, maids, all the people involved should be at the table. So all of them are potential super spreaders in this situation.
Well, I mean, or super healers. I mean, Troy, why? Okay, what's the way out? What's the path forward in your estimation?
They have bargaining rights in California, bargaining rights in 20 different states, but Illinois, no. We actually filed a bill to get collective bargaining rights. The Illinois legislature, it passed the House Labor Committee, it passed the full House, it passed the Senate Executive Committee, and that's when our governor, J.B. Pritzker, who's supposedly so pro-labor, called in a veto threat. And our sponsor was not able to push hard enough to get the Senate president to bring it to the floor for a vote where it would have won. Our governor actually stopped, after claiming to be so pro-labor and pushing labor for the expansion of labor rights to teachers who are majority white in Chicago. When it came to principals, majority black women and Latina women, he all of a sudden he went from being a champion of labor to pulling a Scott Walker. Now I don't know. It's my understanding that and what's behind that is the same thing behind our filthy schools, right? Wealth and greed. The reason our school is so filthy is the custodial company makes more money when they have fewer staff. And so schools are understaffed so they can make more money. And the reason that he called in that veto threat is because his wealthy friends who make, there are people in this country who make money when schools lose money. We have to understand that. They make money when public schools lose money. And they did not want to see the voices of principals at the table bringing truth to the table that might force them to bring more resources to bear. Because people respect principals. People respect their teachers, but I think it was a survey a couple of years ago where principals is like basically who are the most respected leadership professions. And they asked, who do you trust with money? Who do you trust to tell you the truth? Public school principals came out on top in every single one of those questions. So you get principals at the table bringing the truth to conversations in the public mind, and it increases the odds that the public are going to, members of the public are going to force public officials to bring the resources to bear that they need to. And that means cutting into folks' pockets who make money who make money when schools lose money. And it's those same people who called our government.
That concern was not brought to the table. That issue was not brought to the table during the Push Coalition, for example. So we couldn't hook up with it. So we need to involve, to get that to happen, we need all know about it, Troy. Ministers should be pushing that. And parents should be pushing that. And all associations should be pushing that. We must all be involved to make it happen.
You know, ultimately, you cannot depend upon the corporate media to support the people's agenda. That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is making teachers look unreasonable. They constantly interview parents who are not sympathetic to the teacher's position. They do not let us know the conditions of these schools, the film. No one is mentioning any of that. So there's something else. I believe that teachers and custodians and the people who work in food services and principals, everybody has to come together. You can't do it in the suites, Troy. This has to be done in the streets. It's a street fight. You need it. I mean, Mike Smith, what do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a broader issue that impacts the community. And when we were organizing over the summer, we knew we were going to need more help. We were going to need parents. And there's teachers in the streets. I mean, we were out there yesterday. We're going to be out there today. And the thing is, no one is seeing it unless you are in those communities. So we had one community, one school, where the teachers and the aldermen got together and they knocked on 800 random doors. And all 800 of those people said, we are behind the teacher. So the community is there, but no one is seeing that because it's the points that you guys pointed out. Because the community knows the conditions not only the schools are in, but their communities are in. The mayor's in charge of both. You can't say one thing when something else is really going on in front of your face. So people aren't dumb to those points. And what we need to do is to continue to elevate those voices, you know? And that's what we're trying to do. The reality is our schools can't be safe. Are they? No. Because of all the things that we pointed out. There is a way to get those things, but we need a willing leadership to give the very people that we pointed out who've been asking for these things the opportunity to produce.
I'm making this case again, over and over again, by one string guitar. So parents keep this, their sense of outrage, the fact in these people, in these pieces. But the principle you're locked out of the table, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for an organizer. The janitors locked out. The cooks and maids are locked out. So you end up putting all the weight on two people. The union represents all of you. The administration represents the government stuff. We need Lightfoot's input. She has a brilliant mind and commits to the proposition. We need the teacher union. We need more people involved than that, just that number. In the middle, she says we should be in school because the in-school numbers are right about that. It's not enough.
Well, let me go to Fred from LA. Fred, what's on your mind today? Thank you for calling in. Great. Happy New Year, Fred. To Dr. Reeves? Yes, to Dr. Reeves. Uh-huh. Yeah, but Fred, with all due respect, no, Fred,
Okay, by the way.
no, Fred.
She's taking one now. Yep, she's taking one now.
Sure. I mean, no. I don't want you to get off. I'm trying to engage you. So
Okay,
just
hold on.
understand that's how I do that. And so when I interrupt,
Personal
it's not
learning.
to cut you off. It's to engage you.
Yep.
I will say this. I think that
Okay, hold
there's no need to attack the
on. Okay,
teachers
hold on.
and to attack their integrity. No, no, no. And I want Dr. Reeves to respond to you because you're no, I mean, because everybody here, people want to go to work. You didn't even have to start on that. You didn't have to start there, Fred. You just didn't. And it was to be provocative. It's not to be constructive. It's ridiculous.
With all due respect, sir, let me say this. In my position as chapter leader, I share the same amount of, um, I would say, power as a principal in the school. Um, as a teacher, again, I've worked over 22 years. There has not been one day when I've been off from work, which means I work 7 days a week. If my students email me or call me at 12 o'clock at night and I'm up, I respond to them. My colleagues and I work ourselves to the bone. As a matter of fact, I have colleagues who have literally died on the job. I have colleagues who, during this pandemic, because they were not able to go into a school building, committed suicide. So I will not um, allow anyone to disparage my colleagues, their work ethic, and what they have been doing in their vocation, because what you said is absolutely not true.
Troy
We all
LaRaviere.
have supervision. We all have supervision. However, what we've seen is that we, as a collective body, in the same manner that you have spoken, there is no respect for the work that teachers do. There's no respect for the work that educators do. We see children oftentimes more than their parents see them. And even during remote learning, we were open, made ourselves available to our students far more than their parents who they were sitting in front of were doing. I can't tell you the number of students who told me that my mother and my father is here, but they're not talking to me. Can you please jump on Zoom and have a conversation with me? So no, sir. My colleagues and I, we work very hard and we love what we do.
Absolutely. Troy, but Reverend Troy wanted to bring up some data.
Um, he's repeating a talking point, right? That's not his opinion. That's an opinion that's been put out there in the press that he's repeating. And it's a talking point that, once again, is not in line with reality. I asked my principals about, you talk about supervision. That's a really important point, sir. Supervision, right? Students need supervision. And in a pandemic, they need even more heightened supervision because you need folks to ensure that students are following the mitigation protocols of masking and social distance because they are not going to do it without vigilant supervision. Now, when school started a week ago, we surveyed our principals about supervision. And in the 10 most poorly staffed schools, there was an average of 36 staff assigned to that school and 15 of them out of COVID-related illness. Right? Where's the supervision to monitor these students? It's not safe. Whether it's staffing issues, whether it's cleanliness issues, whether it's ventilation issues. And you got to remember principals too. If the students stay home, principals still come to school in Chicago, right? And so if they go remote, principals still show up to work. And even with that in place, knowing principals still work, 70% of them said they did not have the staffing to keep students safe, to keep staff safe. They did not have the cleanliness to keep students safe. 70% of them said the district should go remote for 1 or 2 weeks so that they can get their act together, right? Make sure that the testing protocols are in place. This is a group of people that if the school shut down, still show up to work, have to. And even they are saying that the schools are not safe enough to open and that they should take a week or so to get their act together, get the testing in place, get the cleanliness in place so that we can bring our students back. And I'm one of them. That I have a 14-year-old son who I want in school, but I don't want him in school that's understaffed, where there's not enough supervision to ensure safety, where the ventilation isn't up to par, where there's COVID germs flying all around and no place for them to escape. Like, you have to leave your talking points alone and look at the facts on the ground. And no one sees those facts in an entire school the way a principal does.
Troy. If you give up your power and not speak out publicly, it's kind of your fault. I'm telling you this way. You can have a press conference and make the case. And those who are locked out must be involved. The parents, residents, all the districts, all must be involved in losing our minds. I'm for a total involvement concept. All of it saying is basically true, but it's represented by two people. It comes down to Mr. Sharp and the mayor. And we need more people involved to help them that are involved in it.
From the CEO. But because we're not at the table, the press only puts the microphone in front of us. If we create some special, we have to go out of our way to create a special event and hold a press conference to hopefully get the press to put a microphone in our place.
Join the Rebel Bush Coalition. Let's involve. Let's do this together for next week. Let's do it now. We want to be involved in this process. We're not involved in it. We want to be involved in it.
Okay. All right. Well, no, though. It's out there. It's on the table. That's what we do at Rainbow Push. And throughout the week, you can reach us at 930 East 50th Street. We're reopening slowly but safely. We're being very careful right now as Omicron and Delta continue to surge. Please call us at 773-FREEDOM, 773-373-3366. And I hope you'll meet me on my radio show, the Santita Jackson Show, on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Of course, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. Got to get some closing thoughts from everybody. Hope you'll join us. The push is on. That hopes to convene the principals, the teachers, the custodial staff, the food staff, everybody at Rainbow Push this week. And parents, and students too. Everybody needs to be there because it's our system, whether you have children in it or not. I came straight through K through 12, Reverend, you can get a great education in public schools. You can. It's possible.
Where's the reason? When's Troy? Okay.
12 o'clock. Are you sure? Do you know your schedule? That's not Reverend. You on your way to Atlanta right now. Okay. Back with more. Well, all right. Back with more of Keep Hope Alive in just a few minutes. Closing thoughts.
Let's save all this.
Save the baby. Save the baby. And if you want to love, you got love. Save the baby. Oh, the you will save the baby. All of the children.
Coming up, we'll have closing thoughts from Reverend Jesse Jackson right here on Keep Hope Alive.
What did you say?
Hey, Carrie, we need that tax report by tomorrow.
Okay,
Hey, Bobby, give me that expenses.
For Hari's accounting firm.
Because you speak like you might fall asleep. You can't do that. Your hair looks great. Your hair looks great. You got the right haircut.
To Mike's and Troy's point, I think both of you need to start utilizing social media a little bit more.
You had a ball phone?
tweeting, Instagram. You need to utilize that. YouTube a little bit more.
Is that what you want to do?
Who's speaking?
That's Dr.
Dr.
Marnie Reeve.
Reeve.
You remember you met her up in New York.
Oh, Marty. Hey, Marty.
Hi, Troy. Yeah.
Wanna put it in?
So I really do think, that's something, change.org petition. That's why they're there. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and it needs to be continuous until it becomes viral, because that way your voices can be heard outside of the national media. Because the national media might block you, but social media,
Girl,
they will.
you know, we don't even call it the mainstream media on my show. We call it the corporate media because it's they have a corporate agenda that they are following, and they are not all the things that we've heard from you today, Troy and Mike, Dr. Verholden, even. That's not what's getting reported. I mean, like at all. What you're hearing is Fred. And his point of view, and I respect it, is just wrong. It's an attack upon teachers and labor.
Yeah, but I would also be mindful that when you're saying that principals are working, you also have to remember that remote learning does not mean teachers are not working. Because they are. Right? So that's something that, I hear you loud and clear. You're saying teachers are in the building. But the principals are in the building, but the teachers, while they're at home, they're still working. So it's everyone who is on staff at the schools that's working. The food service workers are still in that building because they're required to be there to provide meals for kids. Those doors open in most cases. I know they did here in New York when we were on remote. Our food service workers were in that school building, and they were not only feeding kids from our schools who went to get food, but the community at large. So everyone is working even though you might be on remote learning. The problem is that everyone needs to be a part of the conversation, and that's not happening. So I would utilize social media more and involve every voice, whether you're invited or not.
Well, that's
and I guess the part about collective bargaining.
I actually have a conversation with a social media expert at 10:30. And that's very perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because you've got to do a workaround. Even a press conference, you're beholden to the editor, and they're beholden to corporate interests that do not serve you. You don't have a sympathetic, let alone an empathetic point of view in corporate media. Not at all. Parents are being cudgeled to death by all of the teachers all you lazy people who work in the school system.
30 seconds.
It's a horrible thing. So everybody, we're gonna hold on. We're coming up. Hold on, we're coming up. We're gonna have 30 seconds apiece for everybody, okay? 30 seconds. If you hear my voice, that means I've got to move on because I've got a hard out at 58. Stand by, please.
10 seconds.
Reverend, we're coming in. Just put your headphones on. You want to put your headphones on?
3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Closing thoughts from you, Dr. Reeves. 30 seconds.
I think it's time for everyone's voice to be heard, and different modes of communicating is necessary. If they don't want to print your words in the newspaper, you create your own newspaper. Take to the streets, take to social media. Those avenues are available to you. They can't stop you there. They can't even stop you right now. Work together in order to ensure that their voices are heard.
Mike Smith. Amen. Mike Smith.
Mountaintop and he's seen the promised land, and that we will all get there. And I believe that we will all get there as a city, as a country, as a people, if we keep bringing this up and have enough voices heard.
Dr. Deborah Holden.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and I I'm going to be working on many fronts myself, not just in my state, but advocating nationally for better legislation around these issues and enforcement of that legislation. It's unfair and just wrong that so many of our kids experience access to quality education and safe and supporting learning environments as a privilege and not a right. That shouldn't be.
Amen. That was Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr.'s. That was the thrust of his of his amendment to the Constitution to grant equal access to equal high quality education to every child in the United States of America. Troy LaRaviere, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I agree with the general sentiment that the Reverend started it. I think everyone repeated that all voices need to be at the table. Of course, I represent the voices of the principals. I think they would be a particularly powerful voice at that table. People often see principals and teachers as at odds, but my experience is that typically we're in agreement on 90% of the issues. Sometimes that 10% gets a little rough, but when you step out of that little 10% moment and you look at the broad scope, we're in agreement 90% of the time, and we can be an extremely effective voice bringing facts to bear to the public. So not only do we need to be at the table, but we also need, all of us need to be on the airwaves. So I appreciate that sentiment as well.
Can't wait to have you on my show and have you back on Reverend Jackson's show. Reverend Jackson, the last 20 seconds belong to you.
Well, the fact is that we need a meeting Wednesday at noontime with the affected. This is for parents, the teachers, the principals, janitors should all be involved.
All right, 12 o'clock at Rainbow Push, 930 East 50th Street. Sending you much love, everybody. So we're at 27, 26?
26 now.
Okay. You
I got it.
You got it. You got it, Dan. You got it. Keep on doing it. Keep on. You got it. You got it. You got it. You know that's a very old song, right? You know that's a very old version of that. All right. Okay. Let me put this in here. You gotta work with, and don't put your mouth on that because he put his hands there. That's why I was squeezing it. So you could no, look. No. Dan, you gotta fix. Squeeze that. See? Squeeze it so you can pick it up. Oh, put your mouth to it. You do it.
You guys want to say bye to Dr. Reeves, Dr.
Okay, everybody.
And Mike Smith?
Mike Smith.
Yes.
Thank everybody. Let me thank everybody here on Facebook. Thank you for bearing with us today. We're in a new studio, as you can see. Very, very happy to be here.
Mike, come out Wednesday at noontime, all right? Let's reach out to the other factors. Troy, you